Alright, so before I jump in here, let me just say that if you don't live in Canada, but you do live in a democracy, you might find what I'm about to say here very relevant for how animal rights activists can use politics, can get involved in the political process in a way that saves the maximum number of animals' lives possible, both during and in between elections. If you live in the United States, I've made several videos as to how there's a mass extinction of a difference between Republicans and Democrats, but here's an article with the mountain of evidence backing up that point. And if there's any one video I would recommend, it would be this one on what kind of specific tactics vegans should use to fight for animals in the United States government. Alright, so Canada, here's what's up. We've got an election coming up very soon, less than a month from now, and there are millions of animals' lives on the line. Let me explain you as to how. First of all, the biggest progress that's been made in Canadian history in combating the climate emergency, which is called the climate rebate, also known as the carbon tax. Some people call it the carbon tax, even myself, which is inaccurate because no Canadians are actually going to get taxed. Polluters are going to have a penalty levied on them. The average Canadian like you and me is going to get a check in the mail. We're going to get money at the end of the year from this, unless you're rich. Rich people don't get the rebate, but rich people don't need the money.
It's basically redistributing wealth from polluters to middle and lower income Canadians and helping shift the entire economy away from fossil fuels. Only someone as completely backwards minded as Donald Trump or as Doug Ford or as Conservative Party leader Andrew Scheer could ever possibly have a problem with something so intelligent.
The climate rebate is estimated to prevent the burning of between 80 and 90 megatons. That's 80 and 90 million tons of toxic greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Those are gases that obviously poison animals as we breathe them in. It poisons the water we all drink. It poisons the soil that our food grows in. And of course, it accelerates the climate emergency, which is causing mass extinction the world over. So if that was the only issue this election, and it's not, but if that was the only issue in this election, we should absolutely all be united to fight and defeat the Conservative Party. FYI, the Conservative Party is currently winning. They are in first place. The other huge issue at stake is, of course, Canada's new food guide, which, as many of you know who live here, is almost entirely plant-based. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that there are over 665 million animals murdered for food every year in Canada. So this new food guide is probably the biggest progress that's been made on that front. Remember, 99% of all animals killed are killed for food. So regardless of how many other issues we all have with the Liberal Party, seal hunt, Trudeau wearing dog fur, y'all know how I feel about that.
And take it from a Canadian fuck Canada goose! And take it from a Canadian fuck Canada goose!
We have to keep our eyes on the ball for animals. If we're trying to make the biggest difference, 99% of animals are killed for food. And this is the biggest progress that's been made because this is education. This is the next generation of Canadians and adults learning about what is the healthiest way to eat. It very much matters. Now, it's not enough. The food guide is definitely not enough of a change. We'd also like to see the government follow through on their recommendations by changing the subsidies so that all of the subsidies goes towards the healthiest kinds of food as opposed to the least healthiest kinds of animal foods. And the Liberal government has begun that transition with a $100 million subsidy to the makers of plant-based protein sources like Beyond Meat, the high-protein peas that make those delicious burgers. But they're still giving billions of dollars to animal agriculture. But with this new food guide, they've opened up the door for us as a movement to demand that they shift those subsidies, which is what the Nation Rising movement is all about. Please join that. Just like the climate rebate, we'd all like to see it happen faster. We'd all like to see more aggressive moves towards dealing with the climate emergency. We'd all like to see a faster transition to a plant-based, not murder-based food system. But it's a lot easier to ask someone to move faster in the direction they're already going in than it is to take 90 million steps back and ask someone to stop being such a douchebag, turn around, ignore that their constituency is the fossil fuel industry and the animal agriculture industry, which is the case for the Conservative Party. So in order to rally vegan action on these issues and more, I'm officially launching a campaign called Vote for Animals Canada. The goal of the Vote for Animals campaign is twofold. First of all, during elections. The goal during the election is simple. Defeat the Conservative Party. Prevent a Conservative victory that is so close to happening right now. That doesn't explicitly mean supporting the Liberal Party. It means supporting whoever is most likely to defeat the Conservatives in any given riding in Canada. But you need to pay attention to where you live. Secondly, in between elections, The goal of Vote for Animals Canada is going to be pressuring members of parliament to vote in favor of animal protection bills and laws that are up for debate in parliament, and even to author new bills, and not just explicit direct animal protection bills, but also, of course, action on the climate emergency, action on toxic pollution, which affects humans and every other species on the planet. And of course, animals already have a voice in parliament, and it's shockingly not the Green Party, who obviously should be vegan if they were actually the Green Party. It's Nathaniel Erskine Smith, a member of the Liberal Party from the beaches here in Toronto. He's responsible for pushing forth a lot of the animal rights progress that's been made under this previous Liberal government, including the ban on shark finning in Canada. Okay, now let's be realistic here. I'm not personally going to change the outcome of Canada's election by myself. But let's also be realistic of the fact that there are approximately 3 million vegans and vegetarians in this country, and that most of those vegans and vegetarians are millennials, they're young people, and a significant amount of young people don't even vote because they're not informed, they're not inspired, they don't understand the differences between the parties, they don't understand how many animals' lives that are on the line. But if vegans and vegetarians who weren't going to vote are made aware of how many millions of animals' lives are on the line, I think it would be very easy to get them to go out to the ballot box. Videos. I mean, what are young people doing most of the time? They're looking at their phones. So it's not that difficult to reach them by Facebook and Instagram. And if we can reach a significant amount of those people, not just people who weren't going to vote, but people who weren't going to vote strategically, people who were going to waste their ballot. If they live in a riding like where I live in one of the key battleground ridings in the country. 1 or 2 percentage points separates liberal and conservative here. But the NDP has like 10% support. The Green Party has a few percent support. If those people were to think and act logically, support the Liberal candidate, and not just support him, but follow through and demand that the Liberal candidate do more on a climate emergency, do more for animals, I think we can make a very serious difference in this election. But still, I'm not going to be able to do it by myself. I need help. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to ask you this earlier, but what do you think the key issues are that we need to be talking about when we meet with our MPs, when we meet with our candidates? Obviously, with 99% of animals being killed for food, changing the subsidies is of paramount importance, from animal-based to plant-based food, from foods that cause disease to foods that prevent disease. Obviously, ending the barbaric seal hunt when it's 2019 is of paramount importance, but what else? What do you think the key realistic issues are that are achievable, that we can accomplish in the next 4 years if we have a Liberal government, or even better, a Liberal NDP Green coalition? Let's start a discussion in the comment section, and let's go out there and actually meet with our MPs and candidates and demand action. So the goal here is to reach and mobilize, the core goal at least, is to reach and mobilize those 3 million vegans and vegetarians in the country. How are we going to do that? So my main contribution is, of course, as someone who makes videos, is going to be making a video called Dear Canadian Animal Lovers. That is going to be much shorter than this video, under 5 minutes. It's going to break down in a concise way what's at stake, what animal lovers need to do. Again, not just voting, but speaking to their representatives, speaking to the candidates who you are going to support, and issuing those demands. I mean, they're your representatives. You can make demands from them politely. Of course, this is Canada. So how can you help in that effort? First of all, if you're already involved in another animal rights group, it's really important for this campaign to be endorsed officially by other groups. Now, I understand some groups, for tax purposes, are not allowed to get active politically, but many groups are not officially registered as a charity in Canada. They're just activist groups, but they have a huge reach. And so it's really important for those groups to endorse the campaign and, of course, actually get active on it. So I need liaisons, I need people who are active in those groups to get in touch with me, and I will send you the executive summary of what this campaign is about. You can send them this video, and let's talk about officially working together. Anyone with connections or ideas about how we can go about fundraising. You know, I've made several videos that have gone viral in the past, and you know, sometimes a video I really hope is going to go viral and expect to go viral doesn't. Sometimes a video I don't expect to go viral does. It's very hard to predict that. I don't know if Dear Canadian Animal Lovers is going to go viral or not. I don't know if it's going to reach 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 people. What I do know is that with targeted advertising on Facebook and Instagram, we could literally blast that video straight into the phones of vegans and vegetarians across Canada. The people we're really trying to reach the most, who we know the message is going to resonate with, who we know are most likely to act on that message and thereby make a difference on election day. But we need money to do that. You know, we're going to be doing crowdfunding, but there might be wealthy individuals, there might be organizations that are allowed to get involved in politics. Again, get in touch. Best way to reach me, by the way, is through Instagram by direct message. I'll put my Instagram tag on screen. Anyone who has experience or abilities in video editing. You know, I'm trying to make that key video for this campaign awesome. I want the imagery to all be there. I want the visuals to match up what we're talking about. So if you can help with that, researching video footage, if you can make your own videos, if you're capable of making videos for this campaign, we want to blanket the internet in Canada. We want to blanket Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube in Canada with this message. You know, it shouldn't just be me putting out these videos. So if you know, if you can make them yourself, if you have connections, people who are active on social media who have a decent reach, get in touch with them, get them in touch with me. Let's work together on this. Anyone who can make memes. Memes are really useful in spreading ideas these days. So people who are good at, you know, Photoshop or GIMP or whatever software you use to create memes, I've already got some ideas that would be great if someone could, you know, put down, not to paper, but put onto screen, if you know what I mean. Writers, journalists, even if you're not officially a journalist, but you understand, you know, how to write stories that are based on evidence. We need writers to be putting out articles on these issues. You know, I'm going to be putting out an article myself on the big picture, but it'd be great to have as many articles as possible on the specifics, and then connect those articles to the big picture, connect everything to the website. Speaking of which, I've already purchased the website voteforanimals.org, which is meant to be a hub for all this kinds of activism. It's meant to be a place you can go, type in your postal code, and find out who the best candidate for animals is in your riding, strategically speaking, realistically speaking. It's meant to be a place where all kinds of resources are for people who want to do more on this issue. So if you're capable of building a website, or if you know someone who's a web designer, who is an animal rights activist who wants to contribute to this, please get them in touch with me. People involved in campuses, student groups, people who are experts in social media, who have a lot of experience on social media. And lastly, people who are involved in other progressive groups. Maybe it's an environmental group, maybe it's a human rights group. And for those of you who don't know, there's obviously a massive connection between human and animal rights. First of all, the biggest human rights issue on the planet, 9 million people starving to death every year, could be completely solved if we took some of the food, a fraction of the food that we give to 65 billion farm animals, and fed it to people. But in an even more specific way for Canadians, the leading causes of death in Canada are cancer and heart disease, two diseases that are absolutely, conclusively proven to be connected to the consumption of animals. So transitioning towards a plant-based food system is going to be saving potentially thousands of Canadian lives every year. Cancer kills 70,000 Canadians. Not all of those cancers can be prevented by a plant-based diet, but many thousands of them certainly could. 50,000 Canadians die from heart disease every year, and nearly every single one of those deaths could be prevented with a plant-based diet. So not only could we be saving an enormous amount of Canadian lives, but we could be saving an enormous amount of money that we spend on healthcare. Canada spends something like $250 billion on healthcare, about $6,000 per person. Then you can imagine, A, we could all get tax cuts if we weren't spending that money, or B, we could be spending that money on something else that is really important, like accelerating our transition away from fossil fuels, like dealing with the climate emergency, or both. You could get a tax cut and spend some money on that with the enormous amount of healthcare savings we could get. And on that note, I just want to remind you that if and when you go meet with, you know, your local Liberal, NDP, or Green Party representatives, not just the candidate, but the campaign itself, the people involved in the campaign, you could do vegan outreach at the same time. You don't need to hide while you're there. You could be like, hey, I'm here because I really love animals. I care about people too. And these are the issues I care about. Oh, and by the way, I brought cookies. Or why don't we all go, you know, to A&W after, have a Beyond Burger, and you could speak honestly about the connections between the climate emergency that everyone's trying to deal with and human health, like I just mentioned, and the food that we eat. So you could feed two birds with one stone, try and make a big difference for the whole country, and on a personal basis, talk to people in progressive parties who have every reason to already go vegan, who are not necessarily vegan yet. You know, you could be the inspiration to them. You could be that personal connection that matters so much in terms of, you know, just helping someone along. People who are already mentally probably on side, intellectually they're already vegan, but, you know, they need to know the recipes. They need to know, maybe they need someone to tell them to go watch Game Changers, which is about to drop, you know. All right, I don't want to make this video any longer, so please head to Vote for Animals Canada on Facebook if you'd like to get involved. I'm going to start an Instagram page too, and let's connect. Let's do something. Let's save as many lives as we possibly can this election. It's the nice thing to do. It's the Canadian thing to do. Peace out. Vegan power.